In this video, we are going to talk about the phases in the cycle of abuse. I am so excited to have Mindy here today, who is our expert on domestic violence. Mindy, I'm so glad you could be here today.
Thank you. Me too. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, this is so important.
It is.
So to get us started, I just want to talk just for a second. I want to give you a brief definition. If you found this video and you're wondering what exactly is domestic violence, in a roundabout way, in a shortened definition is what we would say is that it's a systemic pattern of a willful desire to control someone by your actions. And abuse can take many forms, which we'll talk a little bit about that today. But that's important for you to know, that it's a pattern, that it's a systematic approach of really wanting power and control over someone. Now, we just want to give just some statistics for you guys to realize how prevalent abuse really is in our culture, that 20 people are abused every minute, which is crazy to me. 1 in 3 and 1 in 4 men will be abused at some point in their lifetime.
1 in 3 women. Yes, 1 in 3 women.
1 in 3 women. And over 20,000 calls will come in a day to a hotline for domestic violence.
Yes.
So this is not some fringe issue. This is something that's pervasive in our society. So Mindy, that's what we're going to talk about today. And we're going to explain a little bit more about the phases in the cycle of abuse. So share with us a little bit more about those stats or any other initial thoughts you have.
I would like to add something, that domestic violence and sexual violence are the only 2 crimes where it crosses all boundaries the same. It doesn't matter your race, your religion, your age, your gender, your how much money you make, how much education you have, your sexual orientation. None of that actually plays a role in it.
Wow.
It has to do with, like you said, someone wanting to maintain power and control over their intimate partner. Usually it's their intimate partner.
Okay. Yeah, and I think that's important for us to say, that there's no typical person. I think a lot of times the way movies have portrayed it, that, you know, an abuser looks a certain way, it's kind of a menacing figure, but really in today's age, it can be the religious figure. You know, it can be your lawyer or your doctor that is an abuser, or people that you would be surprised to know are victims of abuse.
In fact, you usually would never know. You cannot tell by just looking at someone if they're an abuser. We think it might be the ones that are maybe a little rude or curt, or you can see how they treat their children out in public, and you think, gosh, that's a mean person. They're probably abusive in their home. But actually, there are some like that. But by far, the largest amount are the ones that you would never know. They are the pillars in the community.
Interesting.
They are a different person behind closed doors.
Yeah. Okay, so all the more reason why this is going to be helpful, I think, if you're listening to this, to be thinking about these phases in the cycle of abuse and to be kind of thinking about, is this descriptive of my relationship or of a relationship of someone in my life? So let's talk about these phases within that cycle of abuse. So in your image here, we see that first the honeymoon phase. Like what exactly do we mean by that, Mindy?
So most relationships start out in this honeymoon type phase where it's passionate, it's romance, it's very loving and fun,
okay.
A lot of chemistry. And that is awesome, but it's normally short-lived.
Okay.
That's a short-term kind of thing. You can still keep the romance alive in your marriage and in your relationships, but it does tend to go one of 2 directions. So after that, it goes to something more healthy, something nurturing,
okay.
something with a lot of respect and compromise.
Okay.
And that is longer lasting.
Okay.
But it also can go another way where it is abusive and it's unhealthy and it's obsessive. And that's what we're talking about here.
Okay.
So most relationships start out that way.
Right.
And so you can't ever tell right off the bat. That's why
so
it's
even
important.
a victim, if you're a person listening to this, you might be like, yeah, that's how my relationship started. It was great. We had a beautiful relationship, and then something along the way changed.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So the next phase then, where it goes to the unhealthy, is the tension building phase?
Yes, the
Tell
tension
us
building
about
phase.
that.
Okay, so that can look a little different in everybody's relationships, but it can be where the mood starts to change. There may be the silent treatment. There's withholding of affection. This is often what people refer to as the walking on eggshells,
Yes.
where you can just feel something. You feel something's not right. This is also when sometimes people report that it's when people start to drink, started to do drugs. They're being nitpicky and you know, just starting to call names, or even where sarcasm.
And getting like aggressive?
Sarcasm happens, yes.
Okay,
yes.
Sarcasm. Okay. So this is all tension building. So nothing's actually happened yet, but the eggshell phase is in full bloom here.
You know something's wrong, you're just not usually sure what.
Okay.
And the victim is doing everything they possibly can
Sure.
to keep the peace.
So
But
they're
there's still
trying to
this tension.
keep the peace. They're
Correct.
sensing something's going on. Okay. So then the next phase then is the explosion.
Right.
What
So
does
there's
that mean?
some event, something happens that actually stops the tension. It can be physical battering. It can be rape. It can be destroying property, threatening to kill themselves, and usually they destroy their partner's property, not something that's meaningful to them, but
Okay.
punching holes in walls and things of that nature.
Okay, so that's when you know something's gone awry,
Yeah.
whether from a physical or sexual experience.
And it could just be even yelling and screaming and a door slamming.
So even just
So
verbal.
it does look different in different people's relationships, but that's generally the explosion stage.
Okay, so that's the event. And then what happens? We cycle back around to,
After the event happens, that's usually when a victim wants to leave.
okay,
This is the stage when they say, I'm done. Because like you said earlier, it's a pattern. It's not something that's a one-time event.
Sure.
It's something that happens. So this is when they say, I'm not doing this anymore.
okay,
So the abuser definitely needs something to pull you back in, correct?
Right.
So they do something, and that's what we call the honeymoon phase
Okay.
again. And that's where they might say, I'm sorry. That's where the apologies come in. They may even cry. They may promise to go to counseling, promise to go to AA, promises to go back to church. Whatever it is that they actually know you want to hear. They get
Okay.
to know their
Sure.
victims very, very well and what it takes to get them back. This is also where we see flowers, gifts. This is also where we see makeup sex. And let me tell you, after the explosion, that's the last thing on the victim's mind.
right,
But that's something that the abuser thinks works.
is the connection,
And,
yeah.
and it's a means of getting them to stay
Okay.
in the relationship. So that's what the honeymoon phase is for.
Okay,
But the sad thing is the victims think the honeymoon phase is there's peace
New
again.
beginnings.
This is,
Yeah.
yes, we can do this. We're doing this as a team.
right,
This is the person I fell in love with. We're
Right.
back on track.
Right.
Let's go for our dreams again.
right. And then it just kind of comes back around where then it
Yes.
starts to build again.
And the tension starts building again. Yep. And they go through this cycle. Now, abuse is very unpredictable. So I'm not trying to say that this, a cycle makes it look predictable. We're going to have this phase. We're going to have
Right.
this phase. Abuse is very unpredictable.
Okay.
But generally, it's very common when people hear about this to say, "This is. I didn't know there was like
right,
a term
I didn't
for it."
realize where I was.
But this
and-
is what's happening
Yeah.
because they think it's their fault. Every little phase that
Sure,
happens,
of
they
course.
feel like they're the ones to blame.
Yeah. Okay, so I hope that if you're out there listening to this today and you've identified, wow, that is descriptive of my relationship, or it's descriptive of someone in my life that I'm worried about that might be in an abusive relationship, here's what we would say to do. There are many, many advocates and people that know what they're talking about in domestic violence that are in your community. Reach out to them. There are national hotlines. Hopefully within every state there are hotlines. Reach out and make sure you're talking to someone to make sure that you are not in a relationship that is toxic and unhealthy. Mindy, thank you so much for being here today. And what we encourage you to do, use those questions below. Talk about this conversation with someone in your life, a trusted friend, someone that you can maybe process through this with, or if you have someone in your life that you're worried about, use this topic and talk to them, use the questions, and help someone in your life, if not even for yourself, to make sure that domestic violence is not something that's in your relationship. So we'll see you in the next video.